We just want to have a meeting of some of the community or anybody who's interested in Nexus or the Nexus community, and just kind of talk about some things we can do going forward to help continue to build our community. We have a pretty strong core community. It's grown a lot over the past year, and we're just here to kind of move it a little bit forward. I mean, historically, my role was community manager, but we've all kind of taken on that role, and many of us, primarily in our Slack groups and elsewhere, have taken a role where we've helped to do that. But Slack's not exactly the best media, especially once you get large. I mean, we're running into hitting our 5,000 people limit, and so it's going to be a little harder to kind of keep people all in one space. So that's one of the things I want to discuss. If people have ideas about social media, how we can have larger groups and places, but
yeah, our community has grown a lot, especially in the past year. It's been done mostly through word of mouth, which is something that we like to reflect from the way the Bitcoin community has grown. Hey, look at this, tell my buddy, tell my family member, and it's grown that way. And people come into our community, first thing, everybody's looking to, make some Bitcoin. And they come in and they're like, oh, this looks promising, and, looks like a way for me to make a profit. And then they hang out for a little bit and they're like, this is something different. This is, this is more like it's a family, and it's like people really care about each other, and they care about the future for their children. And that's the reason we're in it. I don't do this, for my health, for my financial security. I do it because I want my son to have a future where he's not going to be a debt slave like myself. So once people grasp that, they stay, and they don't go. And there's quite a few community members I see in here today that have been around for years now, and they probably came in just that way. Came in and they're like, oh, I'm looking to make a quick buck, and then they're like, wait a second, this is something different. So our community is growing big. Obviously, in the past couple of weeks, like one of our community members, Mercury Miner, said, our little oasis has been found out, because it's a very peaceful, friendly place where we help others learn about cryptocurrency. And it's not just Nexus. We talk about all different kinds of cryptocurrencies. We have a trading channel there, and we educate people on making smart and rational choices before they go dumping their life savings into something. It's like, look, just do a little experimentation. Here's some research. This is what we know, and it's not the team that's done this. It's the community. So the community has built itself to be a very strong community outside of the Nexus team. It was attracting the right people to help other people. Hey, you want to learn how to mine? Well, there's miners there that actually help you learn how to mine anything. If you want to, learn some trading analysis, there's professional, traders. I mean, these guys do it for a life. They don't just trade cryptocurrency. They're on Wall Street too. So, they've got an idea. Cryptocurrency trades differently than, Wall Street securities, obviously. So, there's been a lot that I've learned, but there's been a lot that I've seen a lot of people that are new to cryptocurrency come into our community, and they, I would say, become professionals within a couple months compared to the average person, because all this knowledge is how we, Nexus is about connecting people. We're connecting people with knowledge. We've already been, I've been in cryptocurrency for a couple of years, so I learned out the hard way. I lost a lot of money.
Many of us.
Yeah, I mean, I lost money for years into Bitcoin and altcoins, mainly because there's so many scammers out there. So am I gonna just let somebody else go through, all the hardships I did? No, I'm gonna give them a hint. I'm like, hey, look, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify a little bit, And this has helped our community, and you can see it in our market, because it also strengthens the market, because people do well. They tend to reward where they got, where they did well.
So essentially we have people say, well, we're we're training to buy more Nexus, so it's, you know, it kind of fuels itself as well. But, you know, so, you know, we've built a strong base for a strong core community, and, you know, we love to see that, and we love growing it, and we love growing it organically like we have. But, you know, as with this conference, you know, we want people to reach out. We want more people to get involved. We want, if somebody sees something that needs to be done or they think they can do, we want people to jump in. And that's one of the kind of things that we really want to try to develop, is a way for folks to understand how they can help, you know, how they can get involved. And, you know, we have some ideas about, you know, trying to, Jacinda and Kier as well, they're talking, we want to build like a hub where people can come in, you know, something that's more decentralized, where people can come in and say, this is, you know, needs done. And we, you know, we try to do that, but as being a small core group historically, it's been hard for us to focus on a lot of things. We tend to, you know, gravitate towards some things, and some things get lacked while we're busy doing other things. So we want to try to facilitate that as well. And, you know, if anybody has any ideas about that.
What would you say are some of the major things that make that started the core group being the core group? In other words, was it the technology that attracted that core group of people that have branched off into helping the community in a broader sense? Or was it something else? What would you say?
So I would say that as far as the community goes, I mean, and originally when Nexus, which was Coin Show, came out, it was primarily a group of miners, and it was mostly just a Bitcoin talk group, and that's where the community communicated. And then when Keith and I got more involved in Nexus, you know, we decided to use Slack, and we started, you know, building the community there, and building Facebook groups, and, you know, posting in crypto groups, and, you know, getting the message out that way, posting on Steemit, posting articles, that kind of thing. So it's people see the vision and the goals, because in the beginning it wasn't necessarily all the same, but it has just grown, and the vision has grown, and I think that's what's attracted people to stay as long as they have. But I mean, you know, the original folks kind of sort of were, you know, a smaller, close-knit group, but they realized that by helping others and helping people understand, not just like he was saying, not just Nexus, but crypto and, you know, Bitcoin, if people have questions, you know, it helps people understand things, and that's one of the things, you know, being very open, you know, people learn that, you know, this is a community that we can generally trust, and we can trust folks. So, but that answers your question. Ernie, go ahead.
You guys don't mind if I ask like a billion
You
questions?
ask whatever you want.
The community, when you talk about the Nexus community, it's always centered, you know, any community is centered around something.
Sure.
You know, and it's centered around what? The tech, the goal, the, you know, what you want to bring, change to facilitate what? You know, explain to me why there's Nexus and not Fred's group over here. You know, what's Nexus?
I think that it's a touch of all of that. I mean, it's partially, you know, like he was saying, you know, it's partially the reward financially. You know, you invest in a project, you see it grow, and, you know, you get a return on that. But it's also about the vision, and, you know, things have evolved, and I know you've talked a lot with Colin, and, you know, about the project, and things have evolved over the past couple of years, where, you know, things have just fallen in line, where, you know, way back when Colin and I talked, you know, we had this big vision, but, you know, it just took some time to get to that place. So I think that a lot of the community is there for the vision, and seeing that this can turn into something very large. And
what vision? See, when I talked to Colin, I got the idea that you have a smart young man that can see the code. Okay, why do they do that? They do this better. Let's go faster. So you got a faster, better, you know, car. You know, to go where?
Sure.
To do what?
Sure. Freedom.
I mean, why? I got a fast car now.
Sure, to enable freedom. I mean, to allow people to be able to, you know, do what they want with their lives, and to help build a better world. I mean, that's how I would sum up not just the tech and the currency, but, you know, why we're having this conference, and
well,
why
the goal. See,
the
this
goal.
is my see. You know, now we got a faster, better car. We're gonna go kick ass. Define that. You know, I mean, to what? Because the first time I interviewed Colin, it was at like the last 5 minutes of the show. He's, you know, because I've been going on, you got to get off DARPA's net, man. I mean, that's just the one.
Sure.
Ones and zeros. And they want
Sure.
to play with your ones and zeros. You go to space, he goes, oh, let me tell you about my dad. I mean, you need to lead off of this stuff, you know?
Right, I remember.
So this is, that component is just that they're thinking past and the future.
Sure.
On my website, we've been covering the development of quantum computing for years.
Sure.
And it's coming a lot faster
yeah.
than they're telling. Oh, that's 10. I talk to all the law guys and big, oh, that's 10, 20. I go, yeah, you're on crack.
Right.
This is coming right now. So developing that, so you got security. And then, of course, I want my bubblegum currency, you know.
Yep.
Absolutely.
This is, you know, I need my pirate money. So that's why I go, yeah, you're in. I go, no. Not until you can set, you know, the second letter of mark, which is all this criteria that I need to have, that I was promised early on when Bitcoin first started. They come on the show, on the site, they just hammer about anonymity, low transaction fees, security, speed, all this, and everything just starts to melt away.
Sure.
Except for the uncensorability. I mean, they're not really blocking the ones and zeros going yet, you know, and that's why the mesh thing, you know.
Well, ISPs can shut down a crypto
Exactly.
transaction. I mean, if you,
They actually did it with Bitcoin recently.
they can,
stop the,
you can tell when a Bitcoin
say
trade.
that? No, they did what?
I read an article recently that somewhere they were able to shut off the ports and the signals that were directly coming back. I'm pretty sure it was some company developed this technology to be able to stop that.
And this is where a couple of years ago, when we came into Nexus, originally we had started trying to develop a point-of-sale decentralized mesh network that would be like for local communities, like say Aspen, all the businesses could opt to use a local network versus using the internet, and then offer a localized cryptocurrency that would be used in that community. Well, we were using Raspberry Pi devices. It didn't work out too well, mainly because one of our business partners ran off with all of our money and destroyed the project. But the vision lived on, and as we came to Nexus, we were like, how can we implement this hardware system? Because what comes with software needs to come with a hardware infrastructure. And Colin's like, oh yeah, we'll just put, you know, cube satellites in space, man. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let me check my checkbook. Yeah, that ain't happening, you know. and he's like, oh no, we can make it happen, but yeah, I mean, like, you can't talk about it right now. But my dad's starting a rocket company, and I'm like, what do you mean he's starting? Well, everybody just goes starts a rocket company, you know? He's like, no, he's a rocket scientist, you know. He's been in this business for a while, and then he went into the history, and I was like, well, what are we talking here for cost-wise? Because, you know, still, what, millions, billions to put a satellite up? And he's like, no, these things are, you know, like around 30 grand. And then I'm like, that's like these little Raspberry Pi devices instead of just a little community all over Earth. And then I started saying, hey, you know, we're talking people in other countries that have no access to a uncensorable internet. I mean, look at China right now, or North Korea. They seem to be the only country that didn't sign that satellite treaty, right? So
They own all space.
yeah, and I saw a tweet recently, why don't we just drop iPhones to North Korea? Seriously, because that's how they'll get their information.
No, we're working on a project now. It's called Flash Drives for Freedom. Put all kinds of goodies on there. They're translated in Korean and it's getting smuggled in, drones, whatever.
Yeah, because freedom's popular and it's spread. But the problem here is that the whole internet infrastructure was built for the military and educational systems. And it literally 99% runs through these international cables across, and we don't know where they are because they're top secret.
Facebook just completed a project where they ran their own lines across the
Really?
Atlantic. Yes, I just saw the article.
Well, you know, we knew this was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I've been paying attention. You know, you have Facebook's in their planes. You know, Google was going to do their blimp thing, and then so that's what PiratesWithoutBorders.com is all about. We're going, look, man, just make your own spaceship out of an airship. These are coming. They're being built now. So I did the presentation on. And the CubeSats, I remember when that was a Kickstarter or something back in the day. Then OuterNet came, and I go, yep, here we go. So where's the real use case? Well, OuterNet, it was still, they selected. They determined what got broadcast out. They did. It wasn't an open internet.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do this, it's going to, at what point do you populate and where do you populate the data? Well, then we got involved in BaitSafe. You know, David Irvine and Made Safe, I became buds, and then I bought in, and I go, ooh, we're gonna kick ass. Well, then they got a bunch of money and they're on vacation or something, I don't know what they were doing, but, you know, that concept is what's coming. But
Sure.
it's still, what lacked on Made Safe is the infrastructure.
Right.
They still need to get off, the ones and zeros off of demand surveillance. So this is, I'm in, but the fact that you create this and you make it successful still has to have these other features. You know, so then security, now if you're thinking, a young guy thinking into the future, that quantum is going to be a threat.
Sure.
Okay, so you do that. Then I realized that, you know, Bitcoin is not, or cryptocurrencies has two parts to it. There's the mining, the proof of work, and all the chain stuff over here. Then there's just the security of my freaking public-private digital
Absolutely.
pair.
Yep.
You know, that's where the threat is.
Right,
you know?
absolutely.
So I'm going, wow, you know, now I understand that. So you get higher encryption, so now you get the security thing taken care of. But it always came down to, when Watch My Bid, Doug Scrivener that's here, did a YouTube killer to where instead of watching the ad, you just go blip with your QR code, 2 seconds it plays, and everybody gets paid immediately. You know, they were making a big deal, even the drummer gets paid, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm going, right on, this is great technology. Transaction fees went up, killed it. And I go, without microtransactions,
Right.
you can't have a planet of billions of people being philanthropic and represent their interests with $10 a year.
Yeah, when you live off $1 a day, how are you gonna, if you live off $1 a day, how are you gonna afford $1 fee?
You're not gonna be able to have microtransactions if you keep with a proof of work system though, because that's got inherent costs. They're gonna be beyond the micro.
You know, that is a discussion I went through last year, this last, well, you know, it was within the last year up in Washington. I go to Washington, talk to a lot of these money guys that have been supporters of us and we vacation with, and, you know, it's Atlas 400 and money, you know, Doug Casey guys, okay? So these are the people that were very, so I was young like you back in the day, and taking a hardcore, no compromise position, where do they put the resources to influence? You know, well, people that don't compromise. Well, I need to make sure that the tech is not a compromise.
Sure.
If I can't go to these people that deal in high finance and gold and just, you know, freaking we're good over here and we'll play the stock because we're smarter than them, you know, they understand the freedom aspect of this to go down to people in the sub-Saharan if I don't have any information and I can conduct commerce, you know, without big transaction fees. So that's why I'm the bubblegum guy. I go, because where it came from is Tone Bays and Roger Deere before the split and after on my show going at it, you know, on a regular basis, you know, why we're going to do the split and not and all that stuff. Well, Tone's like, well, what you want to do, be able to buy bubble gum? Freaking ain't right.
That's right, if you want to.
You know, this was the promise from the beginning. It was pirate money, and it gets less and less pirate money. And I can't endorse something that I know from the very beginning the goals aren't even what I want.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, it may take time and you do whatever. Proof of work is, you know, as we went through the argument on this, is that proof of work was required mathematically with the full philosophical thermodynamic of because you have to burn up something, the output doesn't have to be that much.
Well, I think proof of work is a feature and it shouldn't be the feature. So in order to have it, it is a security feature that will ensure that the encryption is protected. But if it's the only security feature, we're going to be chugging along slowly at high fees for a very long time. So that's kind of where we implemented two different types of proof of work, you know, the primes and the hashing, and then we implemented proof of stake, which, you know, we call proof of holding, because we think that if you don't have the mining power, you should be able to also secure the network and be rewarded to do so. Now, not as much as you would, you know, mining, because you're spending a lot more in electricity. But then what that does is that, you know, the fees don't need to be as high as they are. Bitcoin is supposed to be, what was it, 2144? I mean, long after all of us are dead, who knows, maybe they'll have us living longer by then. But, you know, likely long after all of us are dead, Bitcoin's still going to be mined. But then it stops one day.
Transactions still have to roll.
The transactions still have to roll. The real reason behind all this, the fees being bumped high is because of greed. You know, I mean, it's greed. That's what it boils down to. So how do we combat that? You know, that's something.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, Colin's also developing the system to allow for everyone to have a stake in how that changes. Because, I mean, after 10 years, well, 7 years from now, I mean, technically our distribution ends and, you know, we have to decide at that point what we want to do. And that's going to be part of the voting group structure where, you know, of course, miners are going to say, I want to continue to mine. Maybe hardcore proof of stake people are going to say, no, we think it's inefficient. So
Well, the proof of stake is like a first level, but so you can get your low transaction fees and then it kind of secures more up. That's the 3D idea.
Well, the 3D idea is, and it's hard translating Colin in layman terms, but I kind of got it down.
yeah,
I got it down. When you picture a river and a log falls down in that river, the water backs up, and that's the backlog, and that's what's happening with Bitcoin transactions. The backlog and it causes the whole network to slow down, which then miners can kind of bump up the fees. Hey, you want to get pushed through, you got to go through with me, you know, and that allows them to get, you know, more money for their dollar mining. With the 3D blockchain, it's kind of like a canoe, and it's allowing the water to flow around it. And basically, Bitcoin pushes out. When it hits that backlog, it has nowhere to go, it pushes out. This allows it to push back in on both sides, up and down, and distribute that pressure, so then it's not a shock to the system. And he also, you know, he put that in the actual way Nexus is mined, you know, what Bitcoin halves every 4 years. We have a decaying algorithm where it just slowly goes down in distribution.
Is that like the Monero, the way the distribution, the way that the difficulty decays over time? Is it, rather than having, it's more gradual?
It's a gradual, yeah, it's a gradual
it's a
decay.
long
Yeah, and that doesn't, then the system isn't shocked with the supply distribution, you know? And these types of things seem like, you know, little things that you do, but what it does is it allows the balance, you know, the golden mean, you know, the balance between two extremes. If it's too extreme on one end, it's going to really put pressure and stress the system. But if it's balanced out, it's allowed, you know, like water spilling, it's allowed to spread out. But if you pour it in a cup, it's just going to fill up, you know. So that's kind of the thought with the whole 3D.
This is from the second one. We spent a lot of time, a lot of crypto guys and freedom activists, we spent a lot of time on this. And this two sentences here kind of puts this in point. I want to make sure you can address it. Because if I endorse or I go, yeah, Nexus is good, I got to be able to say it, validate it, not be a liar. Because when I'm going to my audience for 8 years, you know, first it's anonymous, then it's pseudo-anonymous, which I had to look up and means not, you know.
Yeah.
And then it was, you know, low transaction fees and all this other stuff. So this is the sentence, and Derek, where's Derek? Derek, man, he was the one I kept hammering on. You got to put this in words, man. So it goes, we must move, and we're talking about the future. We're not hauling around. We'll go in the asteroids and get the palladium, and then we're getting crypto and I'll go back out. I'm not hauling gold. You know what I mean? So we must move funds further, faster, and cheaper than ever before, and make decisions based on an ever accelerating flow of information. So pirates require virtually instantaneous transactions with no arbitrary limits on volume or artificial influences on fees. And that's what I saw that Bitcoin was doing. They created this 1 megabyte because it served their interest and not what they promised.
Absolutely.
So when you do this, is it going to have, there's not going to be an arbitrary limit. It's dynamic in such a way that it's floating around the rocks in fifth dimensional space for all I care, you know?
Yeah.
But the point is that is what gives the artificial influence on the fees. And it's shooting up, and I couldn't believe it went from like nothing to what it is now.
Oh, it was amazing.
It's just
Several months
stupid.
ago, I couldn't believe that I was spending $8 to $10 to get my transaction through quickly. I mean,
And then tone is like, that's a benefit.
No, that's not.
no, that's not.
No,
That's
what are you,
absolutely
stupid?
not.
No, I did 11 transactions that were only 25 cents one day. This was a couple weeks ago at the Philadelphia and the Fed. And I was amazed. I was like, oh, they're back down, you know, to something reasonable. The day after, it was like a day or two after, then it was up $2 for a transaction again. And then I looked, and what's happening? Someone's spamming the chain again, you know, and it's politics. And that's kind of the problem that we have in our world. In crypto reflects politics in, you know, politics.
It's heading
You know?
in that direction.
It is really heading that direction. So why, now this is just a couple people that are influencing this, which is that shows you a centralization weakness. So how do you fix that? That's where the root of all these fee problems are. Well, we want to give power to the people. The people, I mean, anybody should be able to run a light node and help the network. You shouldn't have to have all this expensive hardware just to transmit data. You know, I was talking to someone about Ethereum. Ethereum's already passed Bitcoin, and I mean, you basically need $10,000 to run a node, and it's going to become unaffordable by Christmas time. Like you have to be a data center to run an Ethereum node, because of the size of the block, all the information in the blockchain that has to be, you know, pushed through, and every ICO that's released is adding to this. So it wasn't like thought about when they came up with the protocol. How do you separate, you know, the information? And Colin went into that with the side, basically a side chain. Bitcoin has this feature, side chains, and we can, you know, Bitcoin can really advance itself by, you know, using that feature. I'm sure some people heard of, I think it's rootstock. You know, is that what it's called, rootstock?
I think so. But as far as the mining fees, I mean, or the transaction fees, I mean, Colin has a plan for that, and I believe that he has the solution that will be encoded there so that transactions are.
Well, I don't want a minimum or maximum wage for
Yeah.
mine, you know, you don't want to.
Yeah.
No, well, the network
Be incentivized.
the network should choose that. And the network should be as many people as possible rather than just a select
Right,
few.
making a decision, which is going to be,
So
yeah.
the network is the
I don't
market.
wanna hog everything.
The network is the market. I mean, that is what the network, all of crypto is. It's the emotions of the market. You know, Bitcoin gets slow when the market's reacting on people's emotions. That's just the way it happens. So what do? You're going to let a couple people, their emotions affect it, or are you going to allow everybody to have a say? Because I think that, you know, the whole idea, I mean, like, not mob rule, but you need, like, mob rule should be okay if everybody's in agreement. If we can all agree on the same thing here, it's not even an issue. It's not mob rule, because we're not going out against just one, you know, like a single person. Hey, we're in 100% agreement here, you know? Why can't we fix this? I can guarantee every person I talk, except for Tony, I mean, I've never talked to him, but everybody else seems that the fees are unreasonable. I just bought a car with Bitcoin, and the fee wasn't unreasonable because I spent a lot of Bitcoin to get it. But if I want to get a cup of coffee, that fee,
Right.
the fee is the cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it's an issue. So this is why we're having this conference, is because that's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. So hopefully we can develop technology, not just Nexus, but all cryptocurrencies are working towards solutions. We can share our ideas and make this happen. And that's one of the reasons our community's grown, is because people are like, hey, you know, you're not like out to like get other people. You're trying to help everybody else. You know, you're trying to provide these ideas. You guys want to steal Nexus technology? That's why it's open source. Steal it. You know, like, take it and put it to work. Because we can all, there's not that many blockchain developers out there. There's a lot of hype. You know, I know it for a fact, because, like, you know, like, trying to get developers to work on blockchain, and they might be proficient in something else, but unless you sit down with somebody that's done blockchain and get a schooling on it.
Or spend a lot of time studying, like, you know,
Yeah.
Colin did. But,
Yeah, and you got to spend a lot of time studying it.
yeah,
But yeah, go.
Okay, so my question is, Preston, and I've talked to you about Colin a little. My interest is more in how you can bring it to like real life connections. And I was surprised when I talked about you and Colin, you kind of mentioned about, you know, kind of decentralized communities, you know, off the grid living, farming, that kind of stuff. Can you talk a little about the current status and what you see going forward in that regard?
well, I mean, obviously, things are always developing, and we're kind of at this stage. Nexus is going to go a lot of different directions. I mean, that's one of the reasons for the meeting here is that anybody can take that and do that. I mean, I've talked to numerous people doing different things with blockchain, and they're like, hey, we can do this, or for example, music rights, or video rights, or that kind of thing. So you can take the model and use it and apply it to different things. And I think that is kind of our vision for the decentralization. I mean, obviously, Keith can comment on as well. We want to see everything decentralized. We want government decentralized. We want to see every single thing we can decentralize. It's going to take some time. I mean, we're going to have to provide an option, and people are going to have to see that option. They're going to have to want to use that option. And maybe it's not Nexus. Maybe it's something else that they want to use for that option. But until we get to that point, it's a large transition. But for us, as far as what we see, we want to enable people to also take that and do that themselves. And I'm not a music expert. I'm not a movie expert. I don't know those things. But to provide people with the tools for them to take and do that as well. But.
Yeah, a lot of ideas that came to Nexus came from the community. They're like, hey, we want to see this because this is an issue and we want to see it solved. And we find that the community is the strongest aspect of a market. Bitcoin and Nexus is only as strong as the people that are in it.
How large is the community?
Our Slack's about 5,000 members, and that's just a rough, just kind of guide.
Yeah,
I would say
I mean, working on code, helping develop a suggestion.
Well, there's different people working on code on different aspects. Like the team doesn't develop the miners for people. We had Colin had to in the beginning. Because nobody was in it. It was just him, So, there had to be a miner developed because you're not taking it from existing coin code. You can't just take another miner. So that was something that he took on in the beginning. But since then, other guys coded their own miners. Why? Because miners want to mine. And there's that incentive there to volunteer your time to code this to make it happen. There's a lot of people within the community that volunteer their time. Hey, you need they write articles. Did you write the article on Nexus Simplified, right?
Yeah.
That is one of the most looked at articles by people, and it's just because he took information. Colin's saying this, I'm saying that, Preston's saying that. He took all this information, put it together, and was like, here it is, simplified. Yeah, and so it's largely volunteer. I mean, I've volunteered my time so far.
So just one more thing to say too is especially because I've dove pretty hard into cryptos in the last 6 months, so relatively I'm new, excluding how hard I got into it. So I kind of see how it is from the outside in that one crypto looks like just any other crypto, just sending anonymous money. So one thing, obviously the satellites for Nexus look interesting. In my mind, the thing that could really, go the distance is by having real life applications. I kind of mentioned food or something. If you could have decentralized farming communities, and whether those farmers are paid in Nexus or whatever, that would go a long way of oh, Nexus, those are the ones you can actually buy food with instead of, Monero, Bitcoin Cash, XRP, all those sorts of things.
And that's why one of the reasons we did this conference here, because speaking of farmers, marijuana farmers, they need to move money. They can't move money. Hey, check out all this information about all these cryptos that you can use to move money without having to hire armored guards to move money from place A to place B, because you can't put it in a bank because the government says banks can't do business with marijuana businesses.
The hard part about that, though, is with the Marijuana Enforcement Drug and Regulatory Compliance System is they only let them use dollars. I'm involved in commercial cannabis compliance here in Colorado, have been for the past 5 years. Have been singing Bitcoin's praises, but until the point of sale systems such as BioTrack THC, right. MJ Freeway and others set up a big pay component, they have so much money in fees and stuff that they have to pay in cash to the government that it's just there's no way to slip it in the door right now until you get the point of sale systems to.
Right.
You've got to have a way to seed the community, and one of the things I'm hearing here was how you've got information seeding going on, people taking this information, distilling it, that's empowering, but you need technology to be seeded the same way.
Sure.
So you have to have documentation from the tech to be able to get that, so that the community can say, well, I need to have this thing built, I need to have that thing built. They have the information.
Right,
and
the tools
ability
to do
it.
that, right.
You know already that the developers are in short supply. So if you can't empower them and give them the tools they need to ramp up on the technology, to be able to do their thing, whatever they want to do with your technology, then you're not going to be able to move that technology out into the community.
Right, agreed. And I think that Colin has focused a lot of that, on the Tritium, Amy, and Obsidian updates, where it's going to be easier for folks to do that, to work on top of that. And, for example, Brian, is helping to start coding Nexus Core, and, it's going to be a teaching thing, but it should be easier to build upon. I use the example of Ethereum. You or I can go out and create an Ethereum token because they made it somewhat easy. If you have a little bit of knowledge, you can do that, and that's one of the things that we do have to focus on is having people understand what they can do with Nexus. Agreed.
My son, one of them, he's a geek, like a lot of you guys, and I got him interested in Bitcoin, and about 6-7 months ago, he bought a bunch of graphic card rack doing Ethereum. So then he figured out on the source page, or whatever, on buying the antliners when they come up every 2, 4, 6 weeks or something, that he could automatically do it to where he could be the first one to get in or something, right? So he has 8 antliners coming. Should he be doing any Nexus with them? Can he do it?
He cannot, not at this point. ASIC technology hasn't been developed for Nexus. That doesn't mean that down the road, eventually it will progress to that point. But somebody would have to develop an ASIC miner for Nexus, and at this point, the way I understand it, and I'm not a miner, so unfortunately, but the way I understand it is until it's valuable enough, nobody's going to spend enough time on creating an ASIC specifically for Nexus.
Why would you want to do an ASIC miner anyways if you want to see the thing moving to the future? Because we already know how
Sure.
Fees go up.
fees go up and how it's
Centralized, absolutely.
With the ASIC miner. So why would you want to use that strategy
No,
anyways if you have a
that's a
forward
good
look?
question.
Correct, but that's why, if you watch what Colin said yesterday, he's getting rid of that centralization capability. So even with ASICs, you still would not be able to, now, currently, if, you dominated the systems with ASICs, you still have proof of stake for Nexus, but in the future, that won't be able to occur. So it'll be, now that doesn't mean that if you buy, a million ASICs and you got, more weight, but you won't be able to necessarily dominate the mining. Everybody will get their equal
Hey,
share.
I apologize. Do you mind if I ask these questions?
Go ahead.
Because this is, Grandpa needs to understand. In the space, when it first started, I got the first wallets were blockchain.info on, I think they still have a third of
Sure.
Bitcoin mine somewhere. But I go, where's the grandma just button? Because I deal with a lot of guys, it's Linux and Bitcoin people, and they're pretty much overlap the same anyway. So they go, well, you adjust this, and you just go, well, I can't get you adjust. Come show me this adjust button you guys keep talking about, okay? I look like 49 adjust buttons to me, all right? I need the grandma adjust button. I'm thinking of my wife. I load up air bits on her and peace out,
Sure.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. Then it gets to where now I got the mining is starting to go up because I could see that we had to have a Dyson sphere in the future to be able to power processing Bitcoin.
Sure.
And there was no reason for it to ever stop. It's an arms race. And
Absolutely.
it was designed, and it's like you can't stop that with the current design.
Right.
So instead, it's all about the ASIC, because I saw the development. It was laptops, graphic cards, and then something else, and then the ASIC, and I'm going, does this ever end? No, it doesn't.
No.
So this multi-level confirming, I need to know when I go to my son and I say, yeah, Nexus check, kind of cool, whatever. What is he mining it on? Why would he be mining it? Does it even need to be mined? Is the future not really emphasized on mining? Is it decentralized mining? It's, all my cell phones. What's the future
Let me
on
interject
that?
something with what you just said there. One is that the user interface, the grandma just button is a user interface issue. That's totally separate from the.
No, that's what I'm
the-
saying. We were doing grandma just button on wallets. Now we're over into the, do I need a Dyson sphere? You know, so I'm just, and why would I not? So Nexus, explain it to me in the future of the mining and the people that want to do it. Because you're at what stage now? Do you have a wallet?
Yeah.
Okay, and I can trade and spend and do, because I got my Nexus at Bitrix. I mean, for lack of a better option.
Yeah.
So now what?
You could bring it to your wallet, and you get, if you leave your wallet on 24/7, it's got a variable proof of interest, which allows it to, over time, build trust with the network, and you get rewarded from 0.5% up to 3% yearly. So now yearly would mean, you know, like that 3% of the year, you would get daily payments, but it would be divided up 365.
It has to be a phone or a laptop or?
Laptop.
Yeah,
minimum,
laptop, yeah.
At this point.
See, in my studio, when I sit down and I do my show and so on, I got like 12 computers around me doing different stuff, you know, different, but when I'm done, there's about 5 hours that I need, you know, the computing. After that, I got high-speed broadband, they're sitting there not making me no money.
Yeah.
So I'm going, okay, well, maybe say if I go, yeah, load that stuff on there, I'll house and transmit and rock and roll and give me some. So Nexus is kind of like that?
Yes,
So you'll be able to get those
yeah.
computers?
Also, when, you know, you can CPU mine Nexus, you could use your CPU cycles to do that as well. And when Tritium gets updated, you'll be able to continue CPU mining, and it'll be a little bit fairer than it is right now. So you could use those cycles, although, you know, you are going to use.
Profitable, I mean, would I want to?
It
varies.
would be profitable enough. Actually, we're making it a little bit more easy to CPU mine. So, I mean, it's not going to be as rewarding as hashing, or the current way people are actually using hashing power for.
We're using GPUs.
Yeah,
for
GPU for
mining.
mining now. And that kind of shows you, there was incentive. A miner was like, you know, man, all these guys are CPU mining this one channel in Nexus. I'm going to spend time, I'm going to develop a new miner that's never been developed before to mine prime coins, you know, to use GPU cards to mine prime cards. So then guess who gets rewarded first? Him, because he's got a little bit more power in that channel. But if that was our only channel, that would have been a big issue. Plus with botnets, because CPU mining had issue with botnets. Sure. That would have been a huge issue because, you know, there's our whole, you know, voting power is now, you know, we would have been in a pretty bad position if that happened, if it was just prime. But because we also had the hashing channel, and we also had the proof of stake channel, the holding channel, it doesn't matter. Because you know, we got 2 other channels there. They're balancing against the one channel that the guy's really attacking, essentially. You know, with his power above everybody else.
Why would somebody want to go with the proof of stake channel versus the proof of work channel?
Because technically, do you want to spend a lot of money mining, or do you want to throw the same money mining and then just leaving your laptop on and walking away?
Won't that help to decentralize the network more, to go with more of the proof of stake? But what's your balance?
Oh,
How are you balancing that out?
we believe that there's incentive in both. I mean, you said that after the distribution, it doesn't end after distribution. Mining continues at a 1%. So
Well,
there'll
it's
always
not
be.
coded, no, but let's rephrase that. It's not coded that way. It's coded at 10 years, 7 years from today to stop proof of work. The distribution ends at current. And then proof of stake is there, so proof of stake will continue. But at that point, that's when we will have to decide. And we project.
Vote on it, yeah.
Right, we'll have to vote on it, the community, all the voting groups. At that point, we can decide, oh, well, we want 1% of, you know, annual inflation to be based on proof of work, or everybody comes together and says proof of work systems are now outdated, and we have to address potential extra security issues, or, you know, that kind of thing. But that's kind of the beauty of what we're developing, is to allow a general consensus of multiple people. I mean, obviously miners who are mining, we're going to say, there's no way I want to continue mining. You're going to tell me I can't continue mining. They're going to vote one way, and, you know.
And
What is your governance model? Forgive my ignorance here. I haven't really studied Nexus that much, so
Sure.
forgive my ignorance. But what is your governance model? How do you determine, what's the voting mechanism that you're using? Would it be people that have owned the Nexus coin, or is it the miners, or what?
Right now, it's mainly the miners that are the voters, but we want to give more power to those that are staking to have a voice, developers to have a voice, like a vote, ambassadors, which are others within the Nexus ecosystem to have a voice. So the whole idea is to give as many people a voice as possible. That way, it's not. And with this mining pool thing is actually a big deal, because if you decentralize the mining pools, I mean, the whole hard fork on Ethereum, people were like, oh, that was consensus. No, the miners were actually against it, but the mining pools were scared. And the mining pools are the ones that did the signaling, They're the ones that made the choice, essentially. Each getting forked. And we don't want that to happen in Nexus, because there's a couple mining pools. That means only a couple mining pools are going to determine the future? No. So we want the people that are staking that determine it. We want the individual miners to have power. And by making it so it's a decentralized mining pool for everybody, that means everybody's got the same vote. Like, it depends on how many miners you're running, but yeah, we
So
want.
you're saying if I have a wallet or an account, or just have the Nexus, that leaving my phone on builds up that trust or a proof of stake kind of thing, and that is the voter, the competition.
Yes.
That's one voting, that will be
miners.
one voting group. As it stands
Yep.
now, I mean, we're still just the basic 3 minting channel system, but what Colin is developing now with Tritium, Amine, and Obsidian is going to implement that governance model that he's been developing for more than 2 years, that we've all discussed about how we think is best to have that governance, so it can be autonomous and decentralized. I mean, we don't want Keith and I and Colin and Kier and everybody else in the community is making all the decisions. That's not decentralization, and we want to get to that point where Preston doesn't make a decision. They just put it out on the chain, right? What do you want to vote on?
Like Colin says, decentralize Colin.
Do me a favor, this is one thing that.
He wants people's help. There's developers out here that are very capable of working on this protocol and growing it. But one person has done a lot here, and myself, like what I've done for it, I've done a lot. But I love the fact that people are stepping up and they're like, hey man, I'll take over that job for you, and that's part of the decentralization growing in the community, because it's eventually the vocal cord's going to be cut off from us, and it's just going to be its own, and that's what we want. And we don't want a centralized core team.
We don't want to be. We don't want to be. So we want everybody.
We don't want
everybody to be.
We want everybody to have the same rights within the network.
So the core team is not going to be funded by Blockstream or whatever.
Exactly.
It's going to be, the people and the vote and the weight of the influence of everybody, and we need, we want, we'll make, and then there's some kind of consensus criteria or.
And
yeah,
people.
Honestly, Colin would be best to. I mean,
stick
next
around.
time talk to him. Well, Colin would be best to explain how exactly those mechanisms are. We understand the model, we understand the design, but he knows what he has in mind for the mechanism.
A lot of blockchains have gone through these learning exercises. Dash has got their governance models,
Sure.
invested in the master nodes, but there's problems with that. There's problems with all of them.
Absolutely.
There's no perfect system out
Absolutely.
there yet. But what have you done to learn from all those that are out there now? Because a lot of them have learned some really hard lessons that you can
Sure,
take
and that's,
advantage
one thing that, Colin was actually talking about yesterday when he was giving his presentation. He said, we are going at our own pace. We want to make sure that our foundation is right. We want to study these other models and see how they're flawed. I mean, master nodes, master, what does that tell you? The word master itself says something about what it's doing. It's centralizing processing and giving you a reward for it. I mean, and you could argue, well, if I have a ton of Nexus and I'm proof of staking, I guess, theoretically I have, a little bit higher weight that way at current. But, we want to make sure that we discuss and we understand how those systems work and what we can do. And, you know, it may not, we may come up with something in it, we may see flaws in it, and we say, hey, we gotta change this. This is too much, there's too much weight for this, or there's too much weight for that, or this one group seems like it's kinda, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of testing involved. Before I came to Nexus, I was, you know, we were working with another project, and we were testing to see how the economy worked. What could the market absorb for, you know, a proof of stake? So, yeah, and we found, you know, hey, it looks like the same inflation of gold, 3%. You know, people don't know, but gold's inflated
Without affecting the market negatively.
3% each year is being mined out of the ground. So, yeah, it can absorb that, but we don't want to start right off at, you know, 3%. We want to give people incentives, so we're, you know, and that's where Colin brought it down to 0.5%, and then you get a quick reward up to like 1%. You get up there, and then it gets harder as you get up.
It's on
to
an
get up to 3.
exponential
Yeah.
logarithmic
Curve.
And
And
going to go off the rails. That's one thing. 18 hours with Colin, I'm like, until I understand Bitcoin, what the problem where you're going to get better than, you know, how do I know you're better than? So by the time then we're like, you know,
18-hour days.
Yeah, you know, you gave me, you know, like, all right, now start where you're better. And you went like the stream water thing, you know,
Yep.
not have the clog up. And okay, so I guess you started out, we'll do the rest later, you know. And we did, he came later, and then he got geeked out on me, and I just, that's why I'm sitting there. But the, where Bitcoin went off, because the promises in the beginning, and I remember sitting, it was at a picnic table in Coins in the Kingdom in Orlando with Andreas Antonopoulos till 2 in the morning. And finally he kind of let it slip. Well, the core development, what?
Mhm.
I didn't understand how that worked. And I'm going, what, you like a board of Fed governors or something? I mean, you know, how does this work? So if you got that kind of power and the influence and actually
Right.
doing that, I go, if they, them, those, won't leave us alone can hijack it,
Absolutely.
they will. And I'm going, where can they? Core development.
Exactly. So
Okay?
that's,
So that was neon flashing. I was looking for that, but they were kind of obfuscating that.
Mhm.
They didn't want everybody to know. They kind of get that. So there's a group of guys sitting around like this, going like this.
Yep.
They're deciding.
Absolutely.
Right? So now it's the 1 megabyte thing, and it goes off in the, you know, the gives a crap. So I am looking at from you guys, where did they go off the rail? When did it happen that it was hijacked, that was taken over, that the promises that they made the Liberty community started to go away, and how do we know that's not going to happen with Nexus?
when they separated Bitcoin from Satoshi, I would say that's when it happened. Because, you know, this whole block size debate, and Colin mentioned it, you know, Satoshi said, you know, raise the block size. You know, you got to adapt. You know, he said it. and I think Roger Ver was saying he was going to tweet about that this morning at breakfast. But that's what Satoshi's principles. Satoshi wrote us a white paper, and he basically laid it all out for us. Hey, you know, some people can argue, you know, who he, she, it is that is Satoshi, but it's pretty simple. Read the white paper, and you can see where we have to go, and read the code, and you can see where he wanted it to go, and then you can see where we're actually going, which is not.
One thing we didn't take into account in the white paper was the whole arms race thing that Ernie's talking about.
Sure.
The acceleration of CPU to GPU to
Right.
basics, et cetera. I mean, that was not accounted for in the
He did account for Moore's law. He accounted for it.
That's true, but he did not take into account the incentives that fueled it beyond Moore's law.
Well, he probably didn't think that it would become as popular
Right.
as it did. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, and, you know, and again, and that was part of why Colin, when he started developing Nexus, was he looked at he read the way, he looked at those flaws, he looked at those kind of things, and obviously as the ecosystem has grown, there are a lot more things that we've all seen that do work, that don't work, that, you know, we can see and we can make them better. And that's one of the things. Again, you know, Nexus has been around for 3 years. I mean, we have tons of data. Colin has analyzed the data, watched where attacks come, where the weaknesses are, where, you know, other projects have failed, where Bitcoin has failed. And getting back to your point, Ernie, it's, you know, that centralization, the core centralization, and I know overview of the history of Bitcoin, but there is a point where that core development team got shut off and they exclude people and that kind of thing. And, you know, that's where we want to get out of. we don't want to be in charge. We are here to get it to where it is. And I can tell you that our core team is about freedom. I mean, we want everybody to be free, and we want to give people the tools to be free. And I can tell you that I'm not changing, and this guy sitting beside me ain't changing. You know, that's what we are about. We want to provide those tools for folks to be free, and that's where we.
The mesh interface, where does that get into?
The mesh network. The mesh network. Well, the mesh network originally was to be for, you know, local areas, but then now the mesh network would have to be for the relays to get back up to space. I'm sure everybody here heard about Blockstream, broadcast Bitcoin from space. You know, it's a major innovation. You know, they did a deal with probably some dish TV network and paid for some broadband, which anybody else that has satellite TV knows it's not that big of a deal unless you can send the Bitcoin back up and back down. That's where the big deal comes. So where the mesh networks come in is the mesh networks connect to people that are running local relays to shoot back up. So say I would have a relay in my town, and maybe a couple other people do, and the mesh networks tie into those.
Well, see, the reason I said the mesh interface, of course, you have the mesh network, but the interface between Nexus and that, you know, there has to be some,
Sure.
Is it only gonna be that? Does it go on the other thing? You set the trigger, hit, you know, interface with the mesh, or is that the only way it's gonna be able to be transmitted? Or, I'm wondering what the interface is with the mesh network.
Oh, well, you know, there's no reason to take Nexus off of all the internet. You know, our internet can be an alternate, you know, so you can connect to both systems. So, I mean, because if we take us off the internet, then that's that whole community that you can't do business with. So the mesh network's got to be intertwined.
What
But
about the uplink side? I mean, it's obvious that the decentralization is major going from the satellite
Sure.
downward. But how do you protect the uplink from being overly centralized?
yeah, and that's an issue that we're dealing with, and the uplinks are very important. Otherwise, you can't transmit the data up to the satellites. But, you know, being low, I mean, compared to the Blockstream satellite, these are low Earth orbit satellites. It's going to be easier transmitting
In
data.
Freedom Land.
Yeah, in Freedom Land. It's going to be easier.
Accessible with by phone, or
Potentially cases.
NACP comes up with a new privacy mesh network Nexus phone. or
That
whatever.
in this,
Potentially cases, we discussed possibly, you know, having a case that allows for that reception.
currently it would not be, because the telecom communications have control over these phones and what comes in and out of them. So then that's where we start looking into other industries, you know, alternative phones.
Right, and the
You know?
beauty about what you know, Nexus is doing as well, we'll be able to, you know, if somebody says, hey, I am developing this technology for cell phones to be able to do that, and says, hey, you know, but I need some startup funding. We have the capability to write smart contracts from subsidies for folks to be able to do that once we get, you know, the tritium updates in. Colin's gonna code a contracting mechanism whereby we can start to fuel some of that innovation as well through Nexus. So it's one of the other things that, you know, we are able to provide. So.
Thank you, guys. I feel better.
No, you don't.
You just have more questions, we know.
No, and I know one of your big issues is privacy, and that is something that Colin went into yesterday about being able to hide your keys. Did you see his presentation?
I was in here doing,
Something else. All right.
well, yeah, I was.
Yeah. Now hiding your key, never using the same key twice. This is how you can make things anonymous. This is how we can build towards be anonymous, but also retain your trust as a person in business. Because you can be like, hey, look, you know, I have a name, you know, but hey, I don't want to have a name here, you know. So that's kind of, you know, and that'll protect. That's another security feature too, because you don't want to be able to get singled out on an attack.
is it focused to be a currency? Is it going to be to develop into a multi-state contracts? Is it, I mean, what is the goal?
The Nexus exists as a platform to be built upon. So like you said, you will be able to do smart contracts if you'd like, or you can build your own currencies off it if you'd like. But its main core existence is to be a currency and a platform.
That others can use?
That others can build upon and use.
Yes. Fast, secure, and distributed.
And with that, I guess our official time is up for this for now.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
you know.
Those are all good questions.
Yeah.
Hey, it was about discussion. We're discussing. And obviously, if anybody, wants to get involved in Nexus, I mean,
I think,
Slack,
what am I speaking in this room now?
You're speaking in this room, yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to stick around, I just have to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.